Saturday mornings are supposed to be quiet around here, you know? That peaceful kind of quiet where the loudest thing is a sprinkler sputtering to life, or maybe the lazy bark of somebody's golden retriever. But this one started off with the kind of sound that makes you sit straight up, the high-pitched whine of a power drill. Not exactly the wake-up call I had in mind. I dragged myself to the window, still half dreaming, and there she was, the HOA president herself, Karen, squatting by my electrical panel like she owned the place. For a good 5 seconds, I couldn't make sense of it. But when I realized my meter was gone, my stomach dropped right through the floor. She wasn't just trespassing. She was robbing me in broad daylight. I stormed out onto the driveway, barefoot, coffee sloshing in my hand. I must have looked ridiculous, but so did she, trying to shove a city-owned electric meter into her Lexus like it was a bag of groceries. "This is HOA business," she barked at me, all self-righteous, dusting her hands like she just wrapped up some charity work instead of a felony. It would have been funny if it wasn't so nuts. I told her flat out, "Karen, that's theft. That belongs to the utility company." But she just leaned back on her heels, arms crossed, chin up, and said, "It's not theft if it's enforcement. You're using more power than anybody else. Board says you're probably running some illegal operation." The only illegal thing happening was her stunt right there in my yard. You know what I mean? The absurdity almost made me laugh. I mean, the wildest thing I do is leave my Xbox on overnight. But she waved me off. "Take it up at the meeting," she said, then climbed in and sped away, the meter rattling in her trunk like a trophy. By noon my house was a tomb. No fridge, no Wi-Fi, no air. I sat there, sweating, thinking, this is peak Karen. So I called the power company. The guy on the phone was silent for a beat after I explained, then had me repeat it twice. "She what?" he finally said, the disbelief coming through loud and clear. "They sent out a crew before the sun set." 2 techs stood there, tools in hand, staring at the gaping hole where my meter used to be. "Well, I'll be damned," one muttered. 15 years and nobody's ever stolen a meter. They explained this wasn't just theft. It was tampering, it was a hazard, it was a regulatory nightmare. When I told them it was the HOA president, they looked at each other like, of course, it's her. They got their supervisor on the line, handed me the phone, and told me to lay out every detail for a formal complaint. I did, and for the first time in this whole mess, I felt a glimmer of hope. Karen had crossed a line the city couldn't ignore. They put in a new meter and logged the incident. "Don't worry," the tech said as he left. "She's in for a surprise." That was music to my ears. Karen lived for control, for little fines and power trips. But when you start stealing actual power, well, that's when things get interesting. Next morning, chaos erupted. Neighbors gathered in clusters, whispering about how the utility company had gone straight to Karen's house at sunrise and hauled the stolen meter out of her garage. Someone said she argued so loudly you could hear her down the block, hands flying, face flushed. By noon, an official-looking envelope was stuck to her door. Word spread like wildfire. Karen had been hit with a $25,000 fine for theft and tampering. Not just a slap on the wrist, a full-on scar. That afternoon, I watched her storm onto her porch, waving the notice, shouting about abuse of authority. But this time, nobody was listening. The system she'd used to bully people had turned on her, and I'll admit, I slept like a baby that night, even in the sticky heat. But Karen wasn't the quitting type. The next HOA newsletter that landed in my mailbox was pure comedy. She'd written it herself, all passive-aggressive, declaring the enforcement actions were misunderstood and she was protecting property values. She tried spinning her fine as some clerical error. I nearly choked on my coffee from laughing. The real crack in her armor came at the next meeting. People who'd always nodded along started whispering about her judgment. One guy, Mr. Davis, the quietest neighbor on the street, stood up and asked point-blank if she'd stolen my meter. The room went dead silent. Karen tried to bluster her way out, but it was obvious. Her grip was slipping. Brenda, a board member, finally admitted nobody else had agreed to Karen's enforcement. The room erupted. Afterward, Karen cornered me in the parking lot. Her smile stretched so thin it looked painful. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I shrugged. "Enjoying watching you get what you deserve?" "Yeah, a little." She bared her teeth. "You think this is over? I built this place. Without me, it falls apart." But you could see the panic creeping in. She wasn't fighting for the community, just for herself. A couple days later, I came home to a bright orange HOA violation on my door. Supposedly my brand new, city-issued meter was unsightly and non-compliant. I laughed right there on the porch, snapped a picture, and sent it to the regulatory office along with the history. They didn't waste a minute. Next morning, 2 city inspectors showed up, looked at the notice, and said, "This isn't overreach. It's harassment." They added it to Karen's growing file. That's when it really hit me. Karen was desperate, not just reckless. The fine must have rattled her, and now she was lashing out, making her own problems worse. Neighbors started taking sides. Mrs. Patel from across the street whispered that Karen had come to her door asking for signatures to get me kicked out for causing division. She told her, "Absolutely not. People are tired of her bullying." And then, just when I thought I'd seen every move in her playbook, Karen called the city on me, tried to accuse me of improper electrical modifications. The inspector who came out couldn't even keep a straight face. He said, "Every time she files a complaint, it just makes her case worse." I handed him a bottle of water and couldn't help thinking the universe was stacking the deck. The final straw came at the next emergency board meeting. Karen strutted in and tried to convince everyone to cough up $200 apiece for her legal defense fund. The room exploded. Brenda stood up and said, "Karen, you can't make us pay for your mistake." People started filing out. Karen lost it, banging her gavel and screaming about loyalty, but no one cared. Her reign was crumbling. It got ugly after that. She started stalking the street at night, leaving fresh violation notices in mailboxes, even sneaking around my yard. The day of the recall vote, the turnout was massive. Homemade signs, "Vote her out," sprouted up everywhere. When the count came in, it wasn't even close. Karen was officially out. You'd think that would have been the end, right? You'd be wrong. Her Lexus prowled the block at night, headlights off. She ranted at Mrs. Patel, plastered her yard with signs about being unfairly removed, and finally, one muggy night, cut my power again, left the breaker dangling, wires exposed. That was it. I called the cops and the utility company. They caught her red-handed this time, and the officers finally issued a formal warning. But it didn't slow her down. Within days, she was caught by police again, this time in my yard at 2 in the morning, wrench in hand, tampering with my water line. They hauled her off in handcuffs, neighbors peeking through their curtains. Karen retaliated by suing me for defamation. I countersued for harassment and property damage. Her own lawyer looked embarrassed as the judge tossed her case and set a hearing for mine. Witness after witness took the stand. The evidence was overwhelming. By the time the verdict dropped, damages, fines, and a city citation that would follow her for years, you could feel the entire neighborhood exhale. But here's the thing about people like Karen, they don't just give up. Packages started disappearing, trash cans upended, cars keyed. Everyone knew who, but nobody could prove it. The climax came when she blocked my driveway with her Lexus, rolled down her window, and hissed, "This isn't over. I built this place." I told her, "Karen, the only thing collapsing is you." She peeled out, and I braced for whatever came next. One morning, the city code officers showed up. She'd reported me again, this time for running a criminal enterprise. They poked around, found nothing, apologized, and left shaking their heads. Karen's acts of sabotage grew more desperate, until the day she staged an outright spectacle. She gathered a ragtag crew of outsiders with homemade signs, marching up and down the cul-de-sac with a megaphone, accusing everyone of being traitors and puppets. Police had to break up the circus. Then, the final escalation, she set a fire in my front yard, burning a trash can right next to the grass. I put it out before it spread, but the police didn't shrug it off this time. "This is arson," the officer told me, dead serious. Karen's bail was revoked, and the court ordered her into custody. Her trial became the talk of the county. Every detail came out: utility theft, vandalism, harassment, even attempted arson. The jury needed less than a day to convict. 18 months in jail, fines, and counseling. Karen left the courthouse in cuffs, and the neighborhood finally relaxed. People started living again, block parties, community gardens, even a mural painted on the clubhouse wall. Someone added a tiny electric meter with a lock on it. A little reminder, a joke, a warning. Now, if you drive by, you'll see folks waving, kids chalking the sidewalks, and nobody looking over their shoulder for the HOA queen. And every time I see that mural, I can't help but smile, because Karen's reign is finally over. But here's the real twist, the lesson we all learned. You give someone too much power, you'd better be ready when they try to use it on you. So what do you think? Who was right? Who was wrong? And how would you have handled it? Drop your thoughts below. I've got a feeling this debate isn't finished, not by a long shot.